talk. Now, I'd like to talk in this brief period that I have before me about the left and about Marxism in particular, and within that about the Frankfurt School as a particular type of Marxism. We've never had a speak and we've never had a talk about the left before in these gatherings as the new right per se. Now, from one level, if you're an extreme leftist now in the Western world, in Western Europe, maybe parts of Southern Europe, yes and no, and North America, you'd look around and you'd think there was a cultural desert, that you'd lost completely, that communism had collapsed, that far-left movements have no votes at all, except residually in Italy, to a much smaller extent in France, and a few places elsewhere. You'd think that the socialist dream, that life could be better and more equal and free and so on, had come crashing down completely. And yet, paradoxically, these people have lost a world and yet gained another, because their values, in a subtle way, in a mediated way, in a transliterated way, are the values that exist largely of the society out there. And when you go down and remove Sky Sport and put something else on, and even there, residually, you will find what a Marxist would call the reification of triumphant values. In other words, a soft left viewpoint put again and again and again in every media, at every level. Now, how has this occurred? That a force which in a hard way seems to have lost everywhere, its states have gone down, its military structures have gone down, its Chinese and Asiatic version is producing a mass super-capitalist version with an increasingly post-left, indeed even racial elite that manage the society technologically, and his ideology is frozen into a type of theology. Many Marxists are in despair in this era, and the Frankfurt School that we're going to have a bit of a look at in this talk actually is in some ways a movement of despair, both within Marxism and within Western thinking. Yet this victory and defeat in victory that we have all around us is something that I want to look at. In England, in the early part of the 20th century, intellectuals of left and right often used to debate with each other. This is really no longer possible now, 80, 90 years on. G.K. Chesterton, Hilaire Belloc, Shaw and Wells knew each other well, often had debates with each other. The irony is that if you'd said to them or their audiences, it may be in venues like this, 80 odd years ago and more, that we would have, in the early part of the new millennium, a left-wing capitalist society, people would have said, you're mad! You know, the idea that the market can adopt the values of the folded out, libertarian, slightly soft, but not entirely so, left, would have been regarded as perverse by almost any social and ideological commentator of that era. But it's what we've got, and it's all around us, and it's sort of in the ether, it's all pervasive. Even to cut against it in a very minor way is to create a shock somewhere. Certainly if you're anyone of any reputation or any foreknowledge in the culture, and you make a remark which is incorrect, and you're known, and you ventilated it as such, there's a tremor in the web. And my interpretation of this is that hard Marxism, stroke Marxist-Leninism and various anarchistic and other variants, often to one side of it, have failed. But the trajectory of the ideology itself has succeeded, has morphed, and has transfigured itself in a new way. You've had the left has come into the centre, taken it, turned it around, and what we call liberalism now, either with a small or a large L, is not the liberalism of 50 to 60 years ago. It's not even the liberalism of 150 years ago. The truth is, the people who led Palmerston's Liberal Party have views which in the middle, say, the middle of the 19th century, could be construed as people who, if not to the right of this gathering, then wouldn't have been too far away. The Protestant ideological moralism that underpinned liberal ideas of a traditional sort has been ripped out. So it's become a materialist and secularist ideology prone to infiltration and change by forces from its own radical left. One of the things that's most germane to the Frankfurt School is the Frankfurt School repudiates those elements of communist practice that liberals don't like. The harshness, the camps, the belief in struggle, the secret police, the art of the people and the crushing out of anything that people don't like. Wyszynski screaming that ex-comrades should be killed, beheaded, and their families tortured before they die. All in the name of love and humanity and peace. The French Communist Party organ was l'humanité, humanity. Thorez, who was the leader in the post-war period, was personally trained by Stalin in exile during Vichy to take France, which the Eastern Bloc believed more than Italy at that time was the first Western domino to go within Europe, get them out of NATO, align them with the Warsaw Pact, create chaos inside the Western Alliance and so on. Now, Marxism grows up, of course, from the 19th century, but before Marx gave state socialism and ideological socialism a pseudo-scientific gloss and formulation, there have been various other theories, Saint-Simon, Fourier, utopian types of socialism, some of them the secularization of Christian libertarian ideals. Marx was determined to reshape not just the nature of the left, but the nature of philosophy and the Europe of his time and the world for all time. His type of trajectory relates to a particular view of society that certain intellectuals have. Although he never specified it as such, Marx and those of his ilk who came after him, in a wide range of theorists who've almost died out today, there's not one major Marxist theoretician really who's alive today who's of any importance. You get a minor figure like Alex Kalinkinikos, who was associated with the Socialist Workers' Party at one time, occasionally bobs up, but these are people of almost no importance whatsoever. Baudrillard, a major theorist like this, are cynical, materialistic liberals and libertarians who laugh and who sneer at everything, and it's all a great game to them because they're concerned with language, what it means, what it doesn't mean, how it can be repositioned and so on. They're not really Marxists at all. The last really powerful thinker in that trajectory, well, there could be two of them really, Sartre in a way and Adorno. And after them there are just minor figures who floated out. So this entire mass of theory that begins with Marx is part of the idea that intellectuals can totally dominate society. In the Anglophone worldview, intellectuals are on the whole praised and privileged to a degree, but also accorded a very minor status. In France and in Eastern Europe, which often modelled itself on French patterns of intellectual culture, intellectuals form a class within the society which is very coherent and quite hard-edged. And it's understood that you do the academic jobs, you do the higher journalistic jobs, you do the upper-tier, pre-modern professional media jobs, you write the books, you run the galleries and so on. It's not just an incoherent group of individuals, it's a tier with its own morals, its own way of behaving, its own salons, which are the parties and groups where this particular subset of intelligent people meet. I went to an intellectual salon, run by a continental European, of course, when I was 18. And all the intellectuals were talking about ordinary people. Because that is the class division if you're an intellectual. There are those who live for the mind and ordinary people who don't. So they have their own mental class division within that. And Marx, in his own way, was a radical twist on some of those ideas. He believed that theory could dominate life and social process to such a degree that it could change the world and even human nature forever. One of the important things about Marxism is its total and utter break with the past. Its total and utter break with all religious ideas. There is nothing supernatural, they're just human theories and myths within language. There is nothing prior to man. There are no eternal values whatsoever. Everything is in the now, and everything is based on materialistic precepts which we predetermine every aspect of life. This means that in the high regime and ferocity stage, communism represses religion with extreme and often irrational violence. You always know that a communist movement is falling back again into social democratic centrism and state socialism when it allows people to adopt a religious preference. After the Soviet collapse, when the Communist Party reared up again, and in one of Yeltsin's internal elections, one of the ones that his forces won, they had a bit of a chance.